And at the end, he disappears with the kids. You might get a sequel.
Oh no!
No,
Unforgiven 2.
Suffering.
Hand over the money.
Even less forgiven. Welcome back to Foreplay. We're on movie 3 of our Gene Hackman arc, our first actor arc on this show. We have already done, in case you've missed it, The French Connection, as well as The Conversation. And now we are jumping forward to 1992 with Unforgiven, a Western directed and starring Clint Eastwood, and in which Gene Hackman received his second Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. So we did 3 films from the 1970s. We're going to Night Moves next. That's our next one. So back to the 70s. Some of you were complaining about this.
One person exactly in the comments was complaining about it.
One person. Well, you can go make your own movie.
We've literally picked.
You watch your own Gene Hackman.
We picked 4 performances we're all incredibly fond of, and we've picked, and 2 of them he won Oscars for. And this guy in the comments was going, "Call this a tribute." We've only got 4 episodes to work with. Like, what the fuck do you want?
We also had a laugh because Gene Hackman was good he was great in many movies. However, in the later parts of his career, many of the movies in which he was in are not necessarily great movies. And I think that's the issue. I mean, one of the movies we almost picked was The Royal Tenenbaums, for instance, which is a Wes Anderson film, which is definitely one of the better movies in his later years. Unforgiven, obviously a movie that won Best Picture, and he won his second Oscar for, a legendary classic. But we also, picked films directed by Francis Ford Coppola. You know what I mean? And we did. Richard actually picked Night Moves, which was something I hadn't seen before, but I really enjoyed, and a lesser known film that is going to be very interesting to discuss. So if you choose to watch that one, and also,
we could have picked Superman. We could have done that. We could have, especially, look, we could have cynically gamed the algorithm because obviously the new James Gunn Superman trailer's out there. And by the way,
that is a guilty pleasure of mine.
No,
but I was trying to be legit.
Yeah, I really like his Lex Luthor, honestly. I mean, it might not be the one from the comics, but I think he's a pretty good villain in it,
Yeah.
But there's obviously he has a huge career, and so it's difficult to narrow down those films. And by the way, guys, we are going to slip a cheeky 5th Gene Hackman movie as the start of our next arc. So you guys can look forward to that.
Such is our respect for his phenomenal talents. Not only is he the first actor arc, he's getting 5.
Which also, my wife is very tired of watching Gene Hackman movies because I was watching a bunch of other Gene Hackman movies in addition to the ones on this arc, and now she's like, "God, another Gene Hackman movie."
Well,
so now I'm gonna have to tell her that there's gonna be another one.
At least it went that way, and it wasn't like, "Oh, if you come to bed tonight, Monty, can you shave this part of your head and just have the hair around here?" She started getting a Hackman fetish. Yeah, exactly. Like, have you been picking your feet, baby? Nobody.
I don't think anybody has a Gene Hackman fetish. No. He was many things. Attractive was not among them. Listen, anyway, brilliant actor though. And let's talk about Unforgiven. So this is a very interesting Western because I think of Unforgiven in kind of the same way that I think about L.A. Confidential.
Yes,
which is that L.A. Confidential came out a few years later than this, but L.A. Confidential was a reaction to the Hays Code. And we can talk about, we talked a lot in the film noir arc about the Hays Code, but basically there were laws that said that Hollywood couldn't portray drugs or sex or kind of whatever they deemed unnecessary violence, which is why a lot of the film noir from the period of like the 40s and the 50s ended up being rather tame. And if you actually read the books on which some of these stories are based off of, they're all about prostitution and the drug trade. And then these movies that have the same names as the books are not about that at all because they had to change everything to get it through the censors. And similarly, a lot of the very classic Westerns, particularly of the 50s, right? The 50s and early 60s, they were affected by the Hays Code. And so in the same way that LA Confidential, I feel like, went back and said, okay, we're going to look at film noir, but this time it's going to be all about the hookers and the drugs. This film is very much about the gray areas, over-the-top violence, trying to portray a more realistic version of the Wild West, even if it is an extreme version. And it does have the prostitution that would have been rampant in the Wild West. And the whole story is about violent, murderous gunslingers and whores. And so for me, like, it is kind of a reimagining of the Western in an uncensored capacity.
By the way, what you're saying there, I did want to reference that earlier because I was thinking the same thing. It's like one of the problems I think some people who are maybe younger viewers who haven't experienced this movie before might have is it is really slow. Like, we'll get to this later, but like, look, here's the thing though. I enjoy that. Like, I actually do find it's almost like tantra or something. Like, you're just drawing it out as much as possible, but as a result, it means that the fucking orgasm at the end is unbelievable, isn't it? Like, essentially, the moment when he comes in the room and he just is like the fucking ultimate Clint Eastwood bad guy, that transformation is so unbelievable. It justifies the build-up. But here's the other reason why I think if you're younger, you might not appreciate that as much. It's like Monty said, you have to... I actually think this is an example of film where you need to be grounded in the genre to know why it's so brilliant. Like, if you'd never seen any of those ones he's talking... If you've never seen, like, a fucking Gary Cooper Western or something like that, or even the old Clint Eastwood ones, I don't think you'll fully appreciate this. Like, you have to have that grounding of, like you say, Monty, the sort of sanitized, tame Westerns of the olden days, which are the classic films to watch, where it's always the good guy and the bad guy, the white hat and the black hat, and the sheriff, and the... You know, everyone knows those plots, but also, you also need to know the original Clint Eastwood films. You need to know for a few
the
dollars
trilogy.
Because if you have all of that, if you have that grounding, then the payoff in this movie is unbelievable.
Yes.
Like, I actually think, that's the thing that even shocked me. I don't know about you guys. When I watched this, I remember going, bro, he doesn't do the transformation until there's like 40 minutes left in the film. Like, in my brain, it went way quicker. I thought it was like halfway through or something. Mate, they draw this out so much. And in fact, I will say, I hope you really didn't watch this episode before the film, because if you don't actually know this film before, I actually think it will blow your mind where it goes at the end. You're going to think it's some sort of like Jesus, like redemptive story. It's almost the opposite. It's the ultimate, like, back into the darkness we go.
The backslide
at the end is unbelievable. It's actually one of the best moments in film ever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, this all-time classic, right? And, you know, like Thorin's saying, and I'm sure we'll do a Western arc at some point in time, but a lot of if you think about, I mean, Western is such a huge genre in American cinema, right? Like, you have the entire singing cowboy, early Westerns into John Wayne Westerns, the early Clint Eastwood Westerns. You have the Dollars trilogy. You have, really iconic Westerns like John Wayne with The Searchers or with Shane.
I knew million things,
tons of great stuff. And obviously the Westerns have continued to be made over the years, so this isn't, the only one that is bucking the Hays Code. But I will say,
there was obviously Wild Wild West.
Speaking of 90s, but I mean other 90s, but a lot of the 90s Westerns are really cheesy. I mean, Tombstone is super cheesy.
Wild West, exactly.
And Wild Wild West is a steampunk Western.
By the way,
that was
we told this story before, Monty,
tell it again.
But Sadly, when I was in LA with Monty, I think it was during Flashpoint or something, man, I can't remember. Like, basically, there was a night where we thought, maybe we'll take like a small amount of edible cannabis and enjoy some great cinema. And so at the time, we did that thing where, you fire up whatever streaming service and you go, Tombstone. And you do that thing, which this series is almost designed to now counteract and be the antidote to, which is your brain remembers decades early watching the film when you were a kid. And you go, Tombstone, that's a fucking sick movie, because all you're thinking about is the performance of Val Kilmer. You're just thinking of that part. So you go, this is going to be great, especially when we're high. Then we watched it, and holy fuck, does that movie track? And it's actually like
it's terrible.
It's a really scuffed movie. Actually, I had such
it's also
an aggrandized version in my brain of what that film.
Val Kilmer is still great, guys. His performance as Doc Holliday, amazing. But it is super cheesy. It reeks of the '90s, guys. It's aged
really
so
long
badly.
As well. It's so long.
Yeah, and so if you think about Tombstone compared to Unforgiven, which has aged amazingly well, is still thematically really relevant, feels very fresh and grounded, has great performances from legendary actors, and is very, I think, thematically complex and dense. It's night and day.
The irony Tombstone is the success of Unforgiven is probably partially responsible for the likes of Tombstone even existing.
God damn.
Because Tombstone came out like 93, 94. and obviously Unforgiven's 92. And Unforgiven, when it came out, it was a box office hit. It was a critical hit. It won Best Picture at the Oscars. It was nominated for a bunch of them. And it put Westerns back on the map. And unfortunately, as somebody who loves Westerns, I probably have, I'd say anywhere in the region of 100 to 120 Blu-rays just in that genre. It's one of my favorite genres of all time. It's not, it's up there with horror, blaxploitation, but my Blu-ray collection is pretty much, if you were to divide it into those three, you would pretty much cover all the bases.
Well, and I think, Richard, I think it's fair to say that, and you can check me on this, but a lot of the 1990s Westerns in particular, outside of Unforgiven, have aged really badly.
Yes.
Like, think about Dances with Wolves. That movie sucks.
Well, I'm going to tell you why, because one of the things that they wanted, right? So Unforgiven, the most interesting discussion you can have about Unforgiven for me is it revisionist or deconstructionist? Because those two things are not the same. A revisionist text is something that wants to update, revise a historical narrative, something that we thought we knew was true, but as more information has come to light, we go back and we revise that information. A deconstructionist movie or text is about, we are challenging the very foundations of what we thought we understood from broader concepts like meaning and language, and it is an acknowledgement that those things are unstable. So when you talk about deconstructionist films, it's essentially what they're doing is they're going back to the actual genre that we thought we had nailed, and that every archetype within the genre could be plausibly understood, but we break it down. You can definitely make an argument for both with Unforgiven. The problem is, in the slew of 90s Westerns that came out, and not just Westerns, but also neo-Westerns that came out. I mean, I'll read you out. Obviously, Young Guns was late 80s. Young Guns 2 was in the 90s. You had Lone Star, which is the modern neo-Western set in Texas. Quick and the Dead. I think Gene Hackman's in that, isn't it? That's the one with Sharon Stone.
A fun watch, though.
Obviously, Tombstone we've talked about. Far and Away.
Maverick.
They brought back Maverick with Mel Gibson. Rest his soul. You have and also as well, by the way, you have strange movies that are kind of westerns. I mean, I nearly glossed over Last of the Mohicans, but I'm talking about Ravenous, if you remember that.
Oh,
the cannibal one. Dusk Till Dawn is a western, essentially. It's western coded. And so, like, all through the 90s, you have these movies that are either westerns or neo-westerns or a new interpretation on the western. But what none of those movies ever do is go back to the old films and say, what if all of the heroes in this were pieces of shit? They don't do that. They make them admirable in some way. They make you want to emulate.
Put it this way: this film this film must have been a genesis point for Deadwood. You know what I mean?
There is no Deadwood without Unforgiven. There is no Deadwood.
The real reason, to tie into what you're saying, Monty, the real reason why you actually needed things like LA Confidential and this is, like you say, what people don't know is the sheer amount of artifice of these films when they're in the 50s, because they literally have to have their hands held basically by the government, because they're not allowed to actually portray things as they are. So, like Richard's saying, in a real world, there wouldn't be all these incredible, like, Boy Scout heroes in the Wild West. You'd be back living in some normal city. If you go to the frontier, you do it for reasons like Deadwood, because you're some fucking, like, outsider character, you've got some like weird vice or something, or you just like have to escape civilization. Like, this film does a great job of showing that, because I know what you mean. Like, in this film, there isn't, like, the joke is the closest thing to an actual good guy is probably like the Ned character, and it's even implied he's killed loads of people.
Of course he has,
There's almost nobody who's actually good in this movie. Everyone's some sort of form of moral.
The true potency in the film is the fact it's Clint Eastwood that's gone back to not just direct the movie, but also dissect the characters that he brought to the big screen. And what I think, what I also hope people can appreciate is there is a metatextual exploration of, I have presented the man with no name as a typically heroic character, but he was a psychopath. He was not heroic.
That's what I mean, Richard. I hope people get that. Like, when I watch this film, the one thing I would never say is, where's the prequel? Yep. They already did it. He already did all the... The joke is when he's saying this character, I'm already thinking of the man.
It's also, I would say that because Will Munny's character is what he did before is not referenced. Basically, the implication is that he is the older version of the character from the Dollars trilogy in a way, right? That's what everybody's thinking.
He may as well just be the fucking man with
every time he rode off into the sunset.
Deserves got nothing to do with all
every
that
time
shit,
he rode off into the sunset, what did he do? Well, on a long enough time scale, eventually he gets too old to kill people and get into capers and, you know, do all of these classic spaghetti western tropes. And obviously he settles down on a farm. That's the but so I'll kind of I'll go off on this. I'll front load the episode with this premise because I've never seen an essay that anyone ever wrote this, and yet it seems so obvious to me, and I wanted to know what you guys felt. But like ultimately, right, Gene Hackman's character and Clint Eastwood's character are the same, and they're both called Bill, William. They're both men who clearly don't have wives in their lives. They're both they were both former gunslingers. They were both former alcoholics. They are both trying to settle down into this new world. Now, also one of the great tropes of modern westerns, you know, Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch probably does it the best, is this idea of like, there was a particular set of skills you had to have to survive on the frontier. You had to be very hard, unempathetic, shoot a gun, be able to ride. If you could do those things, you could live in that world. But now we've got this new world. Now we've got settlements and civilization, and a world of violence no longer needs these men. So what becomes of these men that have to reintegrate into society? You either choose to die by the way of the gun, or you become very ineffective farmers, very ineffective traders, very ineffective sheriffs, you know, whatever it might be. Your past always trying to catch up with you. This is a trope within the genre. And so ultimately, I've always postulated, whenever I talk about this film, that there is another version of Unforgiven you could have made from Gene Hackman's character's viewpoint. And he is the same as Will Munny, and he's tried to settle down, and he's haunted by all his guilt, so he becomes a sheriff. He picks up the badge, and now he's settled down in the town of Big Whiskey, and he wants to keep it free from violence. And yet, after this thing that happens on with the hookers getting cut up, he now has to deal with bushwhackers and assassins coming into his town, and he doesn't want.
And he probably also had some traumatic experience with women, like his woman cheated on him and left, which is why he behaves that way towards women.
She could have just died of a fever, and he's just very off kilter around women. You know, it could be the exact same thing as William Munny, and so now he's got like not just bushwhackers and assassins coming in. He's got the guy. He's got fucking the man with no name riding into his town to come and claim a fucking bounty, and he's gonna fucking kill everyone, and he's desperately trying to hold on to it. They are the same person from the same era, and in no way, shape, or form, because when I was a kid and I watched this, I was like, yeah, shoot Gene Hackman. Fuck you. He beat Ned to death. There should be no jubilation in this. They are both the same guy. It couldn't be more explicit in calling both characters William, I think. And also, just to add a little detail, English Bob, brilliantly played, of course, by Richard Harris.
Kills it, doesn't he?
Right.
What a great term.
He is them as well. He's one of them.
Yep.
And this is how it goes. If you want to keep living by the gun in this modern era, you are going to get got. You are a man out of time, figuratively and literally. And so, by the way, Roger Ebert, if you go look this up, he says the whole scene and storyline involving English Bob is bad and unnecessarily extends the run.
What?
I know.
That's one of the best cameos in the film.
And he says it unnecessarily extends the runtime because English Bob doesn't interact with the protagonist.
Let's talk about this.
Right? Yeah. And so, just to put a pin in it before I let you boys go wild with it, obviously, it's essential to show what Gene Hackman is, what English Bob is, what will happen to Clint Eastwood in foreshadowing, and also just like it establishes Gene Hackman as a credible threat.
It's mad, isn't it?
You have to have that scene.
It is okay. I do want to talk about the English Bob thing because I think the first time I watched this movie, it did strike me as superfluous. But the more times I've watched this film, I really understand what it's about. And I will say that for many of you, the structure of this film may be a turnoff because the English Bob thing is like 30 minutes of this movie that does not contribute at all to the main part of the story.
I write.
Letters?
Books, Bill. Books.
And in fact, as our dear friend Mr. Ebert has noted, could have been entirely removed from this movie. So I think we have to ask ourselves, why is it in this movie? Right?
Yeah.
And, I actually, the more times I've watched this film, the more I really like this part for the reasons that you stated, Richard, which is that it sets a precedent for Little Bill, the sheriff, and his actions and his escalations. But I think the most important aspect of it for me is that it actually sets up Will Munny's character.
It's
because
essential. Yeah.
Everything that English Bob is pretending to be.
Oh, yes.
We find out that his career is embellished, right? And, when Little Bill's telling the excellent monologue that Gene Hackman delivers about what it was actually like when the writer puffed up that story that was told to him by English Bob, and it turned out that this guy's gun that he was shooting had misfired, and English Bob just executed him on the ground, but he was drunk, and there was no way he was going to outdraw this guy, and he was dead to rights except for the gun exploding in the guy's hand.
Old Bob wasn't going to wait for Corky to grow a new hand. No, he just walked over there real slow. Because he was drunk. Shot him right through the liver.
And then what we find out later in a scene that's really close to that is when they're out with the Schofield kid, and it's Ned and Will and the Schofield kid on the road, and they're talking about, I heard you killed those 2 guys that one time, and Ned's like, wasn't it 3? And we find out that, if anything, the stories about Will Munny have been understated. Played down.
We know
he was
that
actually
from the final
more
shootout.
badass.
The final shootout is a mirroring of the story. He has a misfire in his gun, and he still kills every motherfucker in the room. You know?
Yes.
The same guy even says something like, you killed 5 people there or something, like almost as though he's writing the story.
Yeah.
So
you're right. He takes the shot, and that's the mirror of the story where the gun does misfire, except it's his gun that misfires, not his opponent's gun, and he still manages to take out 5 or 6 people in the room.
Misfire. Kill us, bitch.
And so the more I watch this film, the more I really appreciate the English Bob segments, because even though it is not connected literally in terms of actions to the Little Bill Will Munny story, which
he never meets the William Munny character.
English Bob English Bob's kicked out before Will Munny and Ned even show up, right?
It's what we call world building now, but back then,
but it's also
really
just thematically connected.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. It's in a literary sense, it is a mirror of what happens in the film, and the way that that narrative is constructed is that it's interwoven with the Will Munny Ned traveling narrative in a way that shows the parallels, and it really is brilliantly constructed when we think about that. So I would not delete it.
No,
personally.
definitely.
No, by the way, I had a similar vibe. What's funny is that was even something. This is why actually this series is so good, that it's not a series where a fan just says a name and then we remember it. We actually go and watch the film and then take notes and think about it, because one of my complaints when I first saw this movie as both a boy and then later in like my 20s when I was watching it as like a classic film was exactly that. It wasn't like, why was he in the film? It was the other way around. For me, it's like, why isn't he in the film more? Because since Richard Harris does such a badass role presenting him with the bravado of this epic gunslinger with this crazy alluded to background, and remember, they even make him look really cool in those opening scenes. That
shooting
where
the
he like swags on all the Americans, shooting all. Yeah, that actually makes him. You'd think, by the way, Richard, to reference the film you said, you'd think this was establishing a character for the quick and the dead. It's going to be some legendary gunslinger, because as you say, they're clearly talking about what happens to the gunslingers in real life, like once the story ends, and like you have to continue on past that battle that then becomes iconic and becomes the stuff of legend, literally. And one of the things that's mad is that made me, when I first watched it, think, oh, what a waste, what a tease. Why like kill off that character? Also, why make him look like a complete bitch after you've established how cool he is? But I know exactly what you mean. First of all, it ties into this idea that all 3 of those characters are, which is like they're people who are gunslingers, but like look at their different reactions to what they did later. And this guy clearly, by the way, the joke is, I now get it, it's bravado, he is a fraud. Like it's all an act. They even do a very, very subtle thing which people might miss, which is when they're sending English Bob away. Remember, before that, he speaks with an upper class English accent.
Yeah, brilliant.
He breaks for a second and sort of goes into like a
savages!
Yeah, like a Cockney East End accent, which, by the way, if you know in England, that is immediately coded as you're working class and you were putting on airs, which describes that character perfectly.
No wonder you won't emigrate to America, because they wouldn't have you in England.
You're a lot of savages, that's what you all are! A bunch of bloody savages! A curse on you!
Yep.
So essentially, Richard Harris did too good a job, and if you're a normie, you'll actually think, what the fuck, why isn't he the bad guy in this? But I'm with you, Richard. The analogy, and everyone who's a nerd should get this is wrestling, and he is putting English Bob over. No, he is putting Little Bill over.
Correct.
What English Bob's character does is show you, remember, at this point in time, we've had no interaction between the William Munny character and the Little Bill character, or the English Bob character and the William Munny character. So what you've done is, you've shown that, like, actually, so far in this movie, Little Bill is the ultimate fucking badass, and you better not ever fuck with him, because look what he did to someone who thought they were a badass, but then rolled up, you know. So in that sense, he does an amazing job putting him over. Like, that scene, again, similarly, by the way, because when I was a kid, I was loving the Richard Harris acting. When he gets to that scene where, like, the WW fucking author guy is passing the gun, you're screaming, like, take the gun and shoot him! But now you realise why he doesn't do that, because guess what? He doesn't have the stones. He doesn't want to take a real gunfight like a gunslinger would do. Whereas actually what it shows, by the way, is the little Bill guy has balls of fucking iron.
I guess you don't want it, Mr. Beauchamp.
He is actually willing. You can for real just take. You know what? It's like, go on, take a crack, mate. Well, I'll give you like a fair shot.
But
like,
it's not
that
loaded, is
actually
it?
gangster.
Wouldn't do you much good if it wasn't. Yeah, I just love it.
That is actually gangster, mate. That
Hard
whole
as
scene
fucking
now becomes
nails.
epic.
Hard
Yeah,
as
I'm with
nails.
you. And also, I'll just throw this out there. People will forget this. Another foreshadowing, remember, goes like this. I'm with Richard. When I first watched this film, I thought the Little Bill character's just evil. Fuck him. The second he does that shit to Ned, it's like, just kill him. I don't care. No, because if you think about it, that's why that opening scene is so bizarre. Because what it shows is that the Little Bill character, who clearly is a killer himself, has tried to like develop some form of ethics. And as you say, Richard, it's actually about like community, like unity sort of. His logic is, if you aren't actually like a truly bad person and you've just sort of like gotten drunk and acted out, then he doesn't think essentially you should deserve it. He even says that you don't deserve like violence. But his logic, as you will see in this film, is if he thinks you are a piece of shit and a coward and you've done anything, then you deserve extreme violence.
Yes.
He will go fucking ham. In fact, if you don't know, the foreshadowing is the movie ends. What does he say before he dies? I don't deserve this. That's his whole shit. Yep. And then they have that epic line that goes, deserves got nothing to do with it. What, by the way, all those lines from Clint Eastwood in The Transformation, instant quotables. It should just be IMDb quotables. It's just that whole scene.
I don't deserve this. To die like this. I was building a house. Deserves got nothing to do with it.
And then also, I'll just throw this out there. The other parallel is, what is it that actually gets English Bob initially into trouble? It's that he doesn't follow the gun ordinance that you have to hand in your gun, right? Well, remember, that is literally foreshadowed later when the William Munny character gets wrecked because he has that gun and initially, like, bitches out and you think, what the fuck, is he never going to do anything about that? That sets that up. I'm with you, Richard. If you don't have all this before, the film's not as good.
No, of course
like,
it isn't.
It looks like it's...
The payoff
like
would suck.
Yeah.
The payoff would suck.
Absolutely.
And that's the great thing about a payoff. It's like payoffs are about pacing and about setup, and they have to feel earned. And like I say, another little clever part to all of this, which I don't think gets talked about enough, is how the biographer Beauchamp, who's following Beauchamp, sorry, my bad. Got to get the pronunciation correct. He is obviously following English Bob, but he's an insert for us, the audience, because he has all of these grand designs about the West and how the West was won, you know, like we would from watching the old films.
Absolutely.
And then everyone he meets...
Oh, he's trying to make Billy the Kid
exactly.
and all. Oh, of course,
everyone he meets basically challenges his preconceptions, and brilliantly with, first of all, Gene Hackman does it incredibly well. That whole bit, by the way, one of the things that I love is there's so many little clever things going on in this movie. Like, it's never explicitly said that English Bob is obviously working class putting on airs, as Duncan says, but we see at the end when he reverts to type as he leaves after he's beaten, dejected, humiliated, his gun bent.
By the way,
very
as a quick
emasculating,
aside,
you know.
That also works so well if you're British, because one of the most weird phenomenons about British people is if you ever look on the internet on Twitter, you'd think every American thinks British people are dickheads. The joke is what English Bob does works 100% of the time, anytime you're British and you go to America. If you essentially just talk like, cheerio, mate, they will bow before you, motherfucker. Because they don't know the difference between accents. Like, mate, I've told you a story before, Monty. I have seen stupid Americans tell me stuff like, I have Hugh Grant's accent. And it's like, holy fuck, you're so in trouble as a country, mate. Like, I have the most poor working class accent, you idiot. It's not even vaguely close. But that's that phenomenon is real. They will actually, the joke is, Richard, in a way, like we with the Westerns, they love the idea that England is all these noblemen and all fucking royalty and heirs and stuff. That's what he plays off in this.
Absolutely. And Gene Hackman, right, reveals he's obviously functionally literate, right? He holds up the book, he says Duck of Death instead of Duke, and there's this recurring joke around that, but then you realise, wait, he can read. He does read.
Yeah, because he reads an extended passage very fluidly, right?
And he says to Beauchamp, he says like he goes, it's Duke, Little Bill, and he goes, Duck, I say.
Events that are described in there are taken from the account of eyewitnesses, sir.
Eyewitnesses?
Yes, sir.
You mean like the duck himself, I guess?
The Duke.
Duck, I says.
And it's to obviously humiliate and emasculate English Bob, while also giving a nod to the fact that he probably came up hard, working class, probably not a lot of time for reading, with what Little Bill was getting up to in the past. And by the way, we don't need a flashback, we don't need exposition. If you just pay attention to what's happening in the movie, everyone's backstory is wonderfully told.
Yes.
You know, in the same way that Morgan Freeman is Ned Logan. I'm pretty sure Clint Eastwood deliberately stayed away from this. Like, he's never racially abused in the movie.
True. Even when they're whipping, they don't say anything. No one ever drops an N-bomb or
nothing like that.
True. Yep.
Yet there is enough coding to know about the fact that he lives out in the sticks, married to a Native American, and the fact that it is whipping that he's able to tolerate.
Yep.
We can probably intuit he was a former slave, maybe an escaped slave. Who even knows? And that's what's wonderful about this film, just in terms of its world building and storytelling. It's actually very, very subtle and intelligent. I think a lot of people don't give it enough credit for that.
Yes. No, by the way, Monty's the one who introduced me to this concept. Funnily enough, actually, it's even something he asked me in the interview he did with me 10 plus years ago when I first met Monty in real life. Essentially, this movie, Monty, is one of the ultimate examples of Hemingway's iceberg theory. The idea that if you actually do a brilliant job, like outlining the story and the characters, you can just infer the rest. You don't actually need to be shown it all. Like, all the shit that's below the iceberg, obviously you only get the tiny bit shows at the top. But if you do it beautifully like this film, like we say, this film, the joke is, the prequel is all the Westerns
Every
before.
Western ever,
but even the explicit storyline, like you say, because of all those archetypes, you immediately know who these people are. The second that they all get described, etc. Like, I'm with you. Then this movie never needed a real prequel. It definitely didn't need a flashback. And by the way, even better that they do that thing where it just has the opening credits with like text. This also is a movie that you would ruin with narration. You don't want someone going, and of course, Little Bill was a guy back in the... No, it's all there for you to find. It's just you've got to just read into it.
Yeah, and I'll also add as well, just to finally, while we're covering all the characters and the archetypes, that, you know, the whole thing with the Schofield kid, who is the guy that essentially says he's going to take the bounty, and because his uncle used to run with, you know, Will Munny back in the day, Clint Eastwood's character, he seeks him out, and then obviously Will Munny co-opts Morgan Freeman's character, Ned Logan, they're all partners, and they go as a trio, but the Schofield kid, you know immediately, like, this kid ain't cut from the same cloth as these two motherfuckers. Like, they're stone cold killers. And then it turns out he's got crippling... By the way, there's no Specsavers to go to in the Wild West. If you are fucking nearsighted, you are fucked. You are absolutely fucked back then.
But it is also very funny. Yeah. Like, it adds a really great comedic element to this film.
Can you see that scrub oak yonder?
Fuck you, Ned.
He's blind, Will.
I ain't blind, you asshole.
Now, hold on. Hold it. How far can you see, kid? 50 yards?
Bet your ass I can see 50 yards, Will.
Then
And also, notice it's another world-building
Yes.
element, Richard, because it's essentially someone going, hey, where's this legendary guy? And the whole movie, they're just going, well, he's gone, he's not around anymore. And it's like, he's back, motherfucker. Like, that's even part of the tease, isn't it? Really drawing it out that, like, because this movie, like I say, if you've never watched it, it really does make you think that actually what happens at the end is the last thing that's going to happen. It's making you think, like, oh, this guy's never going to break. In fact, they try their best, since we haven't talked about William Munny. They do. Here's the one thing I thought was underrated. I have only ever seen Clint Eastwood as these hard characters like he is at the end. I actually was kind of impressed by his role of looking fucking feckless and a bit helpless and all wrecked and worn out. He did a really good job selling that early in the film.
Right, put it this way. Think about all of the big movie stars that have, like, precious, iconic characters and how they would never lampoon them. Not even slightly. And yet, like, the opening scene, Clint Eastwood is rolling around in pig shit. Wrestling with a pig.
Like almost like slapstick comedy.
The man
levels,
with
except it's
no
not supposed to be a
game.
gag.
The man with no game
Yeah.
is here. Like, and yet, you know, he gets the shit kicked out of him by Gene Hackman, absolutely brutalized. He has the rest of the movie, huge scars on his face. He nearly dies of pneumonia. And like, by the way, I also love as well their cure for pneumonia back in the day. Have some whiskey, Will. It's like, no, I swore off it. My wife said not to drink that shit.
Bro, there's a scene where when those prostitutes come and give the free rides out or whatever, when he's riding away, he goes, bring some, like, you know, what they say, well, bring some food or some whiskey. And he goes, bring medicine. It's like, what medicine?
What medicine?
What? Yeah, there's not just a bottle of medicine. Like, what are you talking about, you lunatic?
Yeah, you have to take the whiskey.
What? For what illness and what medicine?
You have to take the whiskey. But
it's not Fallout or something.
But anyway, it's like you say. The point is what happens to the man with no name when he hits his, like, mid to late 50s? It's this. This is what he would look like. This is what he would do. And but as he says in that great monologue at the end, when he gets asked, like, "Oh, how did you approach that massive shootout?" He says, "As it happens, I've always just been lucky with killing."
I was lucky in the order, but I've always been lucky when it comes to killing folks.
And so,
I've always just got lucky, you know. And he talks about how, like, he just has no, in his brain, he has no pressure. And that's a recurring theme in all of this. Like, everyone thinks they're that guy, but there were two people in this movie.
Well, they even have Ned do that, remember? Even the Ned guy can't actually fire the gun. When he comes to go that moment, he kind of
There was only two people in this movie who were that guy, and it was Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman. They were that guy. Both of them were. By the way,
that's why, if you haven't gotten it, that's why this is the Hackman arc. You'd think this was the Clint Eastwood arc. Actually, Hackman is. That's why I can see why he won the award. He is. I
think he steals the show.
He kills it.
I think he steals the show because, as I said, he is at turns. He is not a cartoon villain in this. He is at turns likable. I think he's relatable. I think also as well he has these little flashpoints of menace where you remember who his character's meant to be. Again, when Beauchamp is in his house and it's pissing with leaks through the roof because he's built his own house, Gene Hackman, and you know,
it's the line, Richard. Yeah. Right? Think about what a menacing character this is. But when the author guy stupidly doesn't realize he's the one who made it, he goes, "Should hang the carpenter." That moment of tension, then it just reminds you, like, oh, this guy's an insecure carpenter.
Yeah, maybe you should just hang the carpenter.
What?
Oh, well, I was just saying that because of the, you know, if you hang, doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but also again, a wonderful parallel. Clint Eastwood is rolling around. He can't farm, can't separate the hogs, doesn't know what he's doing.
Also, Richard, this is for you. I don't normally like that sort of textual analysis, but let's think about this, Richard. What is he metaphorically and literally unable to do? Build a house.
Exactly. Yeah, perfectly.
That's what he's trying to do. His version of setting down is like, right, I'm going to build up the city. I'm going to be the sheriff. But you notice he can't really do it. It's flawed, right?
Exactly. I mean, he's also just a garbage sheriff. Because basically the entire problem of this film stems from his incredibly poor judgment about how to deal with this woman getting her face slashed, right? If he had,
I think like we might push back on this
Yeah.
because I think Richard's thing before. Here's the problem, Monty. I know what you mean. Like, put it this way: the latter part of the film, I do think it's really like tactically, it's very stupid how he treats the Ned guy and the fucking William Munny girl. That makes no sense at all. Like, except for the idea that you just don't think there really is anyone who can fuck with you. But I actually think the early part, I think I know what Richard was alluding to because, like I say, that opening scene where he doesn't actually whip the guys and he just tells them to give the ponies. To me, in some sense, like I say about the idea you have to deserve it. To me, it's like because this guy's already answered before was violence. It's like he reserves that for people who are outsiders who are destroying the community. To him, he sees those as just members of the community, and you've got to find a way to like get along, sort of in a fucked up way. And to me, the actual way he treats English Bob, there's another part I didn't get about why that character's necessary. That's also supposed to be. Remember, he even says that. I forgot this line. He basically sort of almost says like that's a message to tell all the people who are the assassins. Don't come here. This is what's going to happen if you come like English Bob. I'll do this to you.
Tell him there ain't no whores gold. Even if there was, oh, they wouldn't want to come looking for it. Anyhow.
So I know what you mean, Monty, but I actually thought the part up to the English Bob part, I actually think that part he's in a weird, fucked up, in his own bizarre code of ethics. That's not a bad job, I actually think, as a sheriff. After that, I think he completely hits it. And he fucks the whole thing up.
I disagree. Look, I
don't
agree
know.
with
Go
you.
on, give me your take. Give me your side.
Yeah, he's taking care of his crew. You know what I mean? That's definitely true. He's trying to protect the locals, but it's an egregious breach of justice because
I agree. Yeah.
I mean, basically, he's saying, okay, well, they're going to pay a fine to the bar owner. There is nothing for this woman who has basically been robbed of her livelihood because she had her face slashed. Although, if we're being honest,
It's not her livelihood.
it wasn't that bad.
That's actually one thing that's one minor issue I agree, Monty. It's like she's just got drawings of paint.
It's
like
obviously
that doesn't work.
obviously
She needed
it's
to be really
horrible.
disfigured. Come on.
The least believable part of this movie is that no man would fuck that woman.
I know. Give me
Every
a break.
man would fuck that woman. That's just what it happens. Got to put that out there.
And they even have to, as a result, have to make the William Munny character like simp for
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Before he goes.
Hey, look,
you know, if I was taking free prostitute folks, I'd definitely pick
anyway.
you.
But you're a beautiful woman, and if I was to want a free one, I'd want it with you, I guess, more than them other two. Just that I can't on account of my wife.
Like you don't. If you think no one was gonna fuck her after that, you don't know men. Okay. But anyway, that aside, she is disfigured, but she doesn't actually get anything for the disfigurement, and it is clear and true that the other women who are prostitutes now feel unsafe, obviously, within their own profession. These guys are allowed to get away with it. Now they have to watch out for any of the other local men who are probably the ones that are their most frequent clients who are going to come in and maybe just enact violence for no reason. And not only that, but because of the way he handles the situation, there's a man who didn't do anything who's even roped in and then later murdered as a result of this. Because sure, it was Quick Mike who was the one who was a douche who cut the woman up. But what's the other guy's? Davey, I believe his name is. What's Davey's fault? He was just in the next room.
And he tried to bring that horse, to be fair. He actually fucked up
he tried to break it up when it happened. He apologized. He tried to bring an extra horse to give directly to the victim. Did he do it? Fuck no, he didn't. And at the end of the day, they also call the bounty on him, and he's the first one murdered. It's terrible.
And he gets it pretty bad.
Oh, I guess
he gets
gut shot, which,
a gut shot,
in case you guys don't know, is
leg.
he gets gut shot, which is in fact one of the worst ways to die.
I'm dying here, boys. I need some water, boys.
So,
God damn it, take him some water.
I'm bleeding, Sliff. Give him a drink of water, god damn it.
I love it.
Muncie, here's the question I have for you, though, is this is also why, to me, I see some of this film as like a response to old westerns. Oh, you're right, in an old western, you just instantly in jail, maybe even get hung for this or something, you know, like there'd be some like harsh punishment. But essentially, that's what I was getting at. It's like, to me, if this really was the frontier, if this really is the Wild West, like, everyone would be sort of a cunt like this. Everyone would be like super harsh with how they had to deal with it. I don't like you're almost talking about what in our society we'd do as like justice in response to this. Do you not think like to me, I sort of get it. Like you either have to go all out and just go fucking scorched earth, or you just have to find a way where in this particular case you could actually split it a different way, Monty. They almost make it that to men they're not caring about the humanity. By the way, I hope that this isn't a crazy idea to people in the modern day, but back then, who would give a fuck about a prostitute? You wouldn't think of that as like a member of your community. At that point, that person's considered degraded and at the lowest end of society.
That's always been the position of law enforcement, is who gives a fuck about prostitutes. That's why serial killers got away with killing prostitutes for years.
If you think about what the approach of Little Bill is to this problem, and then even that guy who in theory was the innocent one, where he was like technically a co-conspirator, but he didn't do any of it himself, like you're saying, those people's action is they just view them as property, so they try to make up for it with property. They're actually even implying, that's even a part that people might miss, that actually the cost of giving all those horses is really fucking expensive. That's way more than like all the paying for the prostitute.
I will do you both one better as well. This has always been my opinion on it, that the pragmatism that Little Bill shows in this, that is the horrifying reality of concessions we make to have a cohesive society. And what Clint Eastwood and the Schofield kid riding out to kill them, that represents frontier justice, actually. And so, unfortunately, in the same way, we all know if somebody hurts a loved one of ours, we certainly will have the power fantasy of wanting to kill them. Some people certainly do go out and enact that. In our brains, we would consider that justice. But we also know on some level, you have to go through the courts. It has to be judiciously applied. Sometimes punitive measures are appropriate, as it was deemed in this case. And let's also look at the moving parts on the board that Little Bill had to process. Those prostitutes who live in that billiards bar, totally all about billiards.
By the way, I even think that's hilarious, the idea you don't go, I'm just going to go up and fuck a prostitute. You go, I'm going to go play billiards
for a bit, yeah, right. So, right, they are getting free lodgings, right, and they obviously kick up for that process. That's kind of
that guy even imported them. He brought that person
That's kind of how modern brothels work. And there is, unfortunately, and by the way, through the modern lens of human trafficking and everything, it's kind of horrifying to say out loud. True. But for the time, this is a common setup. They are essentially his employees.
They're indentured servants.
But also to some degree the property of his establishment. And so therefore, when that horrible crime is perpetrated, Little Bill isn't looking at as a woman has had her face cut up by some yahoos, which had she not been a prostitute in that setting, no doubt Little Bill would have beat the man to death himself. Yes. He is looking at it as an act of vandalism. And so the recourse for vandalism is to pay a fine. And so that to me is, whether you like that or not, that is the concession of what a cohesive society would do. That is modern America.
But what I'm saying is the knock-on effect of this is these women have money and put out $1,000 bounty,
and that is the Old West, which the whole premise of the movie is we are moving away from that into a much better place.
But yeah, I mean, maybe, but
that is the classic trope, that frontier justice. While
I'm saying moving into a better place,
sure,
maybe.
Sure, but I mean,
not that maybe that happens. It definitely does. What you're saying, it happens, but maybe it's a better place.
Let me also tell you, compared to the fucking frontier, like I say, it's why Americans are built different. It's why I fuck with American being high on their own mythology. From kicking out the Brits and forming the Constitution and taming the West. It's why you had to be something else to survive. We've talked about this on previous episodes, but the problem is once you start settling and creating settlements, you can't just be feral. You can't just be out there going, right, well, you wronged me, so let's go outside, blah, 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 blah. You all saw what he did. That has to go, and you have to create a society of laws, and that's what Little Bill is ultimately doing here, irrespective of whether or not you're sympathetic. Because
I'm just saying his judgment ends up being wrong because he pisses off people who are capable of creating more violence.
I'm going to say this, and this is also a stunning and brave opinion that people aren't going to like. He gets super unlucky with Ned Logan dying.
Oh, he does, of course.
Now,
It's even implied he didn't want to do it on purpose. He was just trying to make it harsh.
He was just beating him. He was just beating him to within an inch of his life. And then obviously Ned Logan, who probably was a little bit... I always think there's a little implication that Ned Logan's heart gave out in both a literal and metaphorical sense because he didn't have the heart to kill that guy.
Old,
and he felt guilty and he rode back into town and he wouldn't rat out his friends. And then, you know, he just didn't want to go on, did he? Especially if he did give up the names, which we know from the final scene, he actually was beaten to the point where he did and then died. So I think, like, obviously, does Will Munny come in and fucking murk everyone in Big Whiskey if, like, Ned Logan's still alive? He probably doesn't. So I'm going to say, like, there is a lot of unfortunate circumstance around Gene Hackman's character in this. Like, I'm being real about it. It's a hard job being a sheriff, Monty. You've never done it.
You ain't even gonna whip him?
Well, I find him instead, Alice.
For what they done? Skinny, get some ponies, and that's it? That ain't fair, little Bill. That ain't fair.
So here's the thing, Monty. If he didn't have some sort of weird clemency for these people at the beginning, then he is just the ultimate cop the whole movie.
Yep.
Whereas I think, like, actually, in a weird way, if you don't give him some wrinkle of nuance, like, for example, that whole thing at the end of, like, I don't deserve this, doesn't make sense. You would deserve it. Like, I actually thought that was even an angle that was interesting. By the way, there's even a part tied to the Ned character, because, by the way, the Ned character is the straw that breaks the camel's back and makes the man from No Name come back, right? But there's a detail that I love in this film as well, where they do that thing where you do the trope of, like, oh, you're judging me unfairly. It's like, actually, they were totally right the whole time. So, first of all, at the beginning, when they explain who William Munny... Like, by the way, that woman's mother was 100% on the fucking nose. Like, yeah, this guy's an absolute piece of shit, and he literally just gets your daughter killed. As explained at the end of the movie, you'll never know even what the reason is. There was no reason. Like, he was just like, there you go, she just blew her load on trying to redeem some fucking ultimate gunman. And then later, the Ned character, when he goes to pick him up, his wife's sort of giving him the evil eye.
You know.
Yeah, guess what? He never comes back. Thanks to you, he never got... She was right to be worried. If you go with this guy, the worst part is not only do you die, the more legit guy, but he's lucky, so he always gets away with it. He gets his jam guns, kill 5 people. For him, it all just works. He drizzles his way out of town at the end. That's ridiculous.
Well, I think that's also the really wonderful thematic
texture. By the way, isn't that so godlike also at setting up English Little Bill? Is that part where it's like, mate, already I want him dead when he's whipping him. Yeah. But then he's going like, and then I'm going to actually hurt
he goes, not gentle like before.
I'm going to hurt you. Not gentle like before. But bad.
You know he's going to knock it up a notch. The only thing I'd put it this way, as I've said, with Little Bill, it's tough being a sheriff. Now, he shouldn't have beaten Ned as bad as he did. You can all agree on that. And definitely don't display his corpse outside of a bar.
That is
but
wild.
Also, I thought he handled it.
Displaying the corpse is crazy, as the kids say.
That is crazy for real, for real. That's out of pocket. That's unacceptable.
With a fucking sign, no less.
I was a bushwhacker or whatever.
And tiki torches.
But I will say, his handling of English Bob, absolutely spot on. Also, as well, English Bob's got the fucking nerve to come in and...
Listen, Richard, take out the rest of the movie. The English Bob scene is just great.
I agree. I agree. Like, English Bob's just rolls into town. And he's just going, listen, if you were to hold up a gun to a queen or a king, you'd be too shaky.
As well, he wasn't...
Get the fuck out, you're an American dickhead.
This country should select a king or even a queen rather than a president. One isn't that quick to shoot a king or a queen. The majesty of royalty, you see.
It's even absolutely implied that, just like, by the way, later in the movie to the author, Clint Eastwood says this, it's like, pick up the gun and then I have a justification to kill you. I wasn't just going to, I would have never just shot the English Bob guy for no reason.
As well, by the way.
But if you pick up that gun, then I get to kill you. Like, there's even a weird code of ethics there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's abhorrent, but there is a code of ethics.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this is the problem. It's like, you have to understand that, like, one of the things movies can do is they can make you sympathetic with people just by virtue of, like, you didn't see what they did for 20 years. Right, yes. So we're introduced to Clint Eastwood now. He can't fire a gun straight. He can't separate hogs. He's got kids. He's old.
He's a sick old man.
Yeah, he's a sick old man. He's caught, you know. So we have all of it, dude. Every single Western movie where, like, by the way, I'm pretty sure, which is the one based on Yojimbo? Is that for a few dollars more? Or is that Fistful of Dollars? I always get it mixed up. Anyway, whatever.
I don't remember.
I should know that. I'm ashamed I don't. But anyway, whatever. The bottom line is, like, in that movie, he is literally just playing two criminal gangs off each other.
Jimbo. It's a
Fistful of Dollars. Yeah,
sorry,
he's literally playing two criminal gangs off each other until they're all dead, and then he just rides out of town. He's not even there for the rebuild. He doesn't care. He just causes the carnage, gets the money, and fucks off. That's who Will Munny was in the past, and so. You're meant to... What? He's the hero of the film? No, of course he's not. He is an avatar of the Old West. He is a fucking nightmare. He has fronted justice wrought large. Come to this town of big whiskey. Nothing big about it, by the way. It's got a population of about 50 people, and he just killed 10 of the cunts. It's fucking ridiculous. And so, yeah, I do have some sympathy for Gene Hackman's character a little bit, actually. Because to carve order out of the chaos that was the frontier is unbelievably hard. And by the way, it's a true historical fact, if you've ever read up on the Old West. A lot of the former gunslingers did go and become lawmen. They were sworn in.
You know what's perfect about that, Richard? That just reminds me of in the 90s when all the people with the computer hackers just became the software fucking security experts. Because like that's the guy. Who are you going to hire? The guy.
Don't worry, he's a white hat hacker now. It's like,
exactly.
Don't worry, he's a sheriff now.
Yeah.
He killed 50 people. Yeah, we pardoned him for that. Right, we pardoned. And so that's essentially how the West changed. There had to be some form of absolution and forgiveness. And therefore, when you call the movie Unforgiven, you know, it's all there. It's all there, what it's essentially saying. And so, yeah, I think I remember because my uncle, he, fed me that steady diet of Westerns. I was like 10 years old when this came out. And I remember my uncle being excited to go to a cinema, something we could never afford to do.
Accidentally revealed the birth age there.
It's whatever. He was so excited to go and see this film, right? And we couldn't afford to go, but he went, to see it by himself because he just loved Clint Eastwood. And I remember when he came out, he of course didn't have the correct read. He told me I had to see it. Bad. He's back. He's a badass at the end.
He thought he was a hero, but no way.
No. Totally oversailed all the way over his head.
The message of this movie wasn't he's awesome, be like him.
Yeah. It's like I think he even said something really fucking stupid, like
it's even called Unforgiven, like you said.
I think he even said something really stupid, like, and at the end he disappears with the kids. You might get a sequel.
Oh no!
No!
Unforgiven 2.
Suffering.
Hand over the money.
Even less forgiven.
This one's for Ned.
So,
by the way, like I said though, I do think the ultimate success of this film is that it is just a really long build-up into one of the best payoffs ever for this genre. Like, think about, right, even the thing at the beginning with the prostitutes, I'm already sort of like on edge. I know this is like a fucked up world without justice, Then you have the whole thing like the fucking, when he finally goes to this town, the bar beating that he takes from little... Bill, you're thinking the whole time, surely he's going to snap at some point. Surely he's not really just going to let this guy beat him like this. Then the whole thing with Ned and then Ned's dead. Like, at this point in time, I agree with you, Richard, this isn't a hero. This isn't even an anti-hero. He's almost like the fucking Punisher. It's like he's just doing the, like, sort of, to hunt monsters, you have to become a monster.
That's who he was. The Punisher retired for a couple of years.
But as a result, though, the whole film has been this soft-spoken, broken down Clint Eastwood who's, he even looks all sad and maudlin all the time. He's thinking about his dead wife. Mate, when he just comes into that bar scene, though, it's like quite literally, you would almost think you're using footage from The Man with No Name. He is just that character. And the transformation is so fire. And like I say, almost every line out of his mouth from that point in the movie is a quotable, mate. It is mental. They're all just straight fire. Everything he says.
What I love about that transformation, too, is basically everybody's backsliding in this movie, which I find to be one of the more interesting thematic tropes. Like, if you think about Ned, we've referenced how he couldn't pull the trigger on his Spencer rifle to kill Davy, right? But how else is he backsliding? Oh, he's in the whorehouse. He's getting wasted on the whiskey, right? And so what's interesting is you think, oh,
I mean, that's
well,
what even leads to him dying potentially, Monty. If
Yeah.
he hadn't have done that, if he hadn't have given into that, even though he had his wife, he might have been alive.
Yeah. And so Will Munny, meanwhile, he's not giving in to any of that, right? He's refusing the drink. He's like, I'm done with that. My wife got me over that. And even though she's dead, I'm still not going to drink now. But he's still capable
Which also
of pulling...
makes it 10 times more gangster when he then just starts drinking all the whiskey at the end and killing everyone. Like, that also just makes it like, I know where this is going now, boys. I know where this is going.
What's interesting about him is the way he backslides is just by starting to murder people again, right? And then it just gets worse
he's
and
had a
worse
relapse,
and
Monty.
worse.
He's had one of them relapses where you start murdering everyone again.
Just the murderer relapse. He fell off the murder wagon.
Listen, murdering is moreish. Once you murder once, the next thing you know, you've done 2, 3 more, you get a pizza at the end of the night, you just murdered everyone at that point in time. What can you do? I just relapsed. It was, one mistake.
But I just thought it was funny that these other characters are relapsing in different ways, and it appears at first as though he's fine, right? But then over time, you get to see his descent back into his past as well. And it's
by the way, if you ever
fun.
wanted to see someone you didn't like as a villain die, I think probably one of the most satisfying ways would be someone literally stands over them and point blank blows their face off with a shotgun. Like, it's a pretty good ending.
I'll see you in hell, William Munny.
And that's a pretty good way to sort of put the full stop at the end of the Little Bill storyline there. That's pretty gangster.
Oh, I mean, it's the only way it could end. That's the other key component to this. That all of...
Oh, Ryan Johnson would just make it at the end like he gets away or something. But like, I think the payoff is
all
so
of these movies which are about kind of like going back and doing this revisionism around the Wild West, because obviously as cowboys were always the good guys, and then it really took until the Italians started putting their own spin on westerns with what we call spaghetti westerns, where you even kind of had these like vague notions of the anti-hero, and that's obviously because it was a product of its own time. There was a lot of political turmoil at the time in 60s Italy when a lot of these movies were being made. It's a reason why the Zapata Western, the revolutionary Mexican revolution westerns, are so popular from that time period. And so yeah, obviously all of these movies end with people have to die. That is how it. That's the only way you move on from the Old West. The Old West must be destroyed. I mean, look, I'll say this because I'm conscious of our audience, and there's been a lot of pretentious cinematic wankery going on. If you're a fan of the Red Dead Redemption,
and we do that, not you guys in the comments.
Yes, yeah,
come on.
Yeah. Red. If you're a fan of the Red Dead Redemption games. Again, you can't have Red Dead. You can't have that without this movie. Like, seriously, 100%. It paves the way across multiple genres to really go back, and we did it in TV with Deadwood. We did it in video games. I mean, Red Dead Redemption, by the way, it's so wonderfully observed in terms of like if you get the references, like the Mauser from the the Grand Silence, I should say, Il Grande Silenzio being used and things like this. But Unforgiven is the touchstone. The idea you can't outrun the past. The idea the past will come back to kill you one way or the other, and that's in that sense. You could also make a coherent argument to say this isn't Will Munny's story. This is Little Bill Daggett's story, how Bill Daggett died. Because he'd essentially done everything right, renounced his past, settled down, entered into law enforcement, seemed to be well liked in the community. I mean, it's not like people hate him. They might be a little bit afraid of him. Not a bad trait for a lawman. But even like that one-armed dude, when he's loading up and they're all going, is Little Bill going to turn up and deal with English Bob? We don't know. They've never seen that violent side to him. They've never had to. It's implied they've never had to. They don't know how real Little Bill actually is. They think he might stay away from a real gunslinger like English Bob. Well, fuck no, he's going to come into town, he's going to absolutely batter him to within an inch of his life, then just emasculate him privately in the prison, and then pack him on his way with a bent gun, the ultimate sign of emasculation. I've fucking took your dick, I've bent your dick, deal with that, right? It's fucking great. I mean, like, It's why I say, like, I genuinely believe Gene Hackman steals the show here. It's not that everyone else isn't doing a really, really good job. It's not that there's not some wonderful cameos. I think everyone in this movie is so appropriately cast. It just works. But Gene Hackman is, for me, he is the towering, he is, like I say, the warm-hearted sign of what men can be when they lay down violence and focus on a future and building things. But he's also the towering inferno of rage if his moral code is perceived to be violated. He's essentially a protectorate, of his little community. And also, we know he's a man of, horrifying violence in his past.
Well, I would also say that his ham-fisted attempts at dispensing justice are the reason why his community is in danger in the first place.
But he wouldn't know any better. How would you learn that? How would you?
That's also to me why the whole house thing as a metaphor is great.
Exactly.
Because it's the idea that, like, what if you did want to, like, turn over a new leaf and live a different life, but you were just shit at it, and the only thing you were ever good at was killing people and being an arsehole? Like that sounds like a joke, but I think there actually are people. Pretty sure I think in real life that's another reason people do crime as career criminals. I think what happens is it's not just emasculating, but you go and you work at, like, the fucking Kmart or whatever, and you go, I'm not even good at this. It's just nothing. Like, I was good at being a fucking thief or a villain or a thug or something, and so that lifestyle's always called.
It definitely works as an allegory for just recidivism in general, right? Like, you what
the whole film does,
what happens if you're a criminal and you have to go get that 9 to 5 and you're trying to turn over a new leaf, and it's like...
And then you have that boss fucking with you, and then that customer comes in and goes, hey, man, you wouldn't fucking say something to me. Yeah, exactly. The whole time you're just going to be thinking, keep it, No, you're right, actually. The role of the guy who becomes the black cook, who becomes the guy...
Dennis Haysbert,
That's exactly what we're talking about. That exact mini plot line, which I always thought was a beautiful little, like, bit they just wove in there that's not even mentioned much, because obviously he's one of the ones who tragically dies. That's exactly the story we're talking about. You just get pushed to the point you go, fuck it, back to my old life I go. So,
I mean, like, obviously when faced with also, it's implied a little bit, like, looking after the kids. If the hogs all die because of this fever, what are we going to do in the winter? If you know anything about how, like, your farms work, basically how it used to be in the West, you would have your crops in the summer, assuming you could grow some, and you would use that as, like, fresh food. You would harvest that, you would eat that, but then you had to slaughter animals and smoke the meat and find ways to preserve the meat to get you through a winter when crops wouldn't grow. And so obviously, like, the implication here is if all the pigs die, your kids could starve. So it's not that Will Munny's like... I mean, you can read it both ways. I think probably Will Munny was like... His arm was a little bit easily twisted. Like, probably... Like, he's like...
No, but here's another thing. I also think that's an aspect that people will forget about the fact he has kids and that his wife's dead. Is that's another reason, by the way, why it takes so much to break you. Because the thing you don't think about, it would be the least cool storyline ever, is if you're going to have some actual anti-hero gunslinger, he can't be like, but if I die, my kids are just going to starve back home. So, no, if you're the family man, Monty, you're supposed to take it on the chin and just go, there's a bigger thing here. Like, I've got other people to look after. I can't do it because my own ego's gotten hurt. Better just go home and take it on the chin. Like, so there's another thing, but surely anyone who's a family man knows what it would feel like, the sensation you want to give up the restraint and fucking lash out, but you have to for the sake of your family, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, also as well, there's some nice little details around this. Like Gene Hackman nearly turned this role down.
Holy shit. For what? What was that, Superman 4?
No, he said he looked back at, like, his entire, like, all the movies he'd done, and he said he was just sick and tired of, like, violent movies. He wanted to move on from...
Oh, mate, that's what's mad, because to me, this is, like, the zenith
I
of
agree.
exactly what by the way, if we're in the next one, we're going to do the Night Moves one. I actually think that'll be one of my critiques of Night Moves. One of the things it lacks, actually, is I don't think it actually picks the right sort of character for Gene Hackman. This movie is the ultimate example of what Gene Hackman can do, because it is even though it's an overused word, sadly, for brilliant actors, he is the ultimate actor for intensity on screen. He doesn't have to say anything, mate. You could just feel, like when that writer's talking, you can just feel the tension build the second he gives you that look or that sternness. And the moment he does flip from, because you notice even in this character, he does that thing where there's moments where he's almost charming, where he's sort of like, he's got like a lighter air to what he's saying, or he's saying a slick line like to English Bob. But the second he turns and he's vicious, he's so believable as like a villainous character. I thought he nailed it. I'm trying to think now, Richard, how mad his career would be. Gene Hackman's career would be like half of what it is if he didn't do this.
Oh,
role.
sure.
If he only had those 70s films, mate, I think people would think of him very differently. This is like, to me, this is the crown jewel.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, out of all, he did a few westerns and he did a few Clint Eastwood movies too. I think they had a pretty good rapport, which makes sense if you know about Hackman's approach to acting, which we've talked about in the past.
The no-nonsense guys.
Yeah, and obviously, right. Clint Eastwood doesn't even say action and cut. Like, on a set, Clint Eastwood will roll in, start recording, and it'll just go, okay.
It's the idea as a director, he's doing it like the man from No. Like, you did the scene, next scene we go.
Yeah.
Give me some motivation.
Yeah. So you can understand it, but I mean, like ultimately, I agree. I think, like, first of all, the movie absolutely, like, I don't know, cast anyone else? Like, would you?
Who would you even put?
Yeah,
exactly.
Like,
who could even play that role? I would struggle.
Who would absolutely nail it, like in the way that Hackman did? There's no one. I can't think of a contemporary in the early '90s you could have put in that role, and it had the same potency. And also, as well, like I say, you've got to remember, whenever you're doing a Clint Eastwood western, if you're the villain, you have to be a good foil for Clint Eastwood. There has to be a muscularity to your performance, unless of course you go in. A lot of westerns obviously did used to have the slimy bureaucrat as the bad guy. He would, but he would always hire a dude who was a good match.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, by the way, we're also forgetting one detail. I just remembered one line we have to reference, that another mad one, because this also does show Monty that even though they're building up like Little Bill as like a mega evil guy, he isn't pure evil though, because even he does that line that would make no sense if they're just evil people fighting you. He does that line where when he kills the barman guy or whatever, like the owner of their establishment, he's like, "You killed an innocent man with a wife and kids or whatever." Like, and just that whole line of like, "Didn't you kill women and children?" Like, it's the idea that again he thinks he has some sort of code of ethics, Monty, even though we might disagree. Like, obviously towards he'd be a villain, but that shows there is some sort of a contrast, which is also why I love that part of the transformation. Even though, by the way, this is why it's Unforgiven, because guess what? When you then go like, "Yeah, I did kill women," that's pretty irredeemable at that point in time. You know what? I don't really at that point really care how nice you are to a black former slave and a young guy who can't see. Like,
I've killed women and children. Killed just about everything that walks or crawled at one time or another. And I'm here to kill you, Little Bill. For what you did to Ned.
You did literally kill women. And you also, by the way, this is another thing I want to throw out there, because I feel like people might misread this, or maybe I'm misreading it. You tell me. When he does that moment where after he's killed the people in the bar, he opens the saloon door and he shouts to everyone, like, "I'm going to come out. And if anyone tries to fuck with me, basically, I won't just kill you. I'll kill your family, all your kids." I didn't take that as an empty threat just to escape. I took that as he's back, mate. This character that character has been fully summoned back. And for real, if you fuck with him, he will scorch the earth.
Yeah.
Like, he's back.
Yeah.
That's why it's mad that your uncle was like, it's a great film. Whatever I'm going to
I just think it's so funny because the film is, like you pointed out, literally just called Unforgiven.
Yeah. No,
at the end it all works out. Though, it's brilliant.
So, a couple of other little details we haven't talked about, which I think might be just interesting as we kind of hit the.
Also, I do appreciate that. Again, we're back on track, guys. I was worried with that last arc, but it turns out that, again, in a brilliant, misunderstood film, Roger Ebert completely doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. He's back. Tell you who is back. It's Roger Ebert, mate. He's back.
Always
there you go.
So the screenwriter for this was also the screenwriter for Blade Runner.
Yeah, legendary writer.
Yeah, he did Blade Runner. He did 12 Monkeys as well.
Fucking great movies.
Yeah, right.
It's a pretty strong resume already, mate. Yes.
Like especially from a conceptual and writing perspective, right?
Oh, and also he did 12 Monkeys. Mate, this guy did some fucking work.
Yeah. I mean, also he did do, according to Wikipedia, he also did do the script revisions for Lady Hawk, which I know you've done on Nerd.
No, that has to be
Richard, we haven't done that yet, but we will.
How is that possible?
How have you missed Lady Hawk,
possible?
for fuck's
No
sake?
way.
Because we're going chronologically, and I believe it's 1984, and we're not.
Wait a
in
minute, how many films
1984
have you watched already? You're not
Done like 500 episodes.
Thorin, there are like I shit you not, there are probably over 60 sword and sorcery movies that were made in the 1980s. They're like 10 a year. Okay, like 5, but there's like at least 6 like every single year. Some of them have like 10.
Now, I'm also gonna blow your minds, right? And this is definitely one that Duncan's gonna appreciate. You're actually gonna go watch this. They remade this film.
No.
they remade it, and it's Japanese, and it's good. And
wait a minute, you mean you've done the Ugo reverse card instead of doing Seven Samurai Come Over, and you've actually put shout out Japan
and guess who plays Clint Eastwood's character in it?
Please say
it's when was the movie?
No way! Oh my! I am actually going to watch that. Holy fuck! Let me look this up. I meant that as a joke.
Yeah, it was
because I just felt like the obvious.
It was about like 12, 13 years ago now. But anyway, I've seen it.
I actually meant that sarcastically. Holy shit! It actually is.
Dude.
That is amazing, though.
That sounds really good.
Because if you guys don't know the reference here, so we haven't done Kurosawa yet, but the Kurosawa film Seven Samurai was turned into the original Magnificent Seven, which was then remade, which maybe you guys have seen. Anyway, both the Magnificent Seven and the Seven Samurai are great movies.
Yes.
Yeah, both great films,
but basically, a lot of the westerns were being inspired by the samurai films that were being made in Japan in the 50s and 60s. And so the reverse card is now that Unforgiven comes out as like the new wave of western starts in the 90s, right? Now we get the Japanese being like, but what if we turn this western into a samurai movie?
I love all the interlinking samurai movie, western movie back and forth because
it's great.
Because obviously it makes sense. It's it's what I talk about when I talk about American mythology. That's their warrior class. That's our warrior culture. The people that went out and
those were their samurais.
Absolutely. So those stories are, of course, completely interchangeable. Totally works.
Yes.
I'll say that this is a spoiler. If anyone does want to watch the remake, which I do recommend, it is legit. Unfortunately, the ending is a little bit different because how it ends in Unforgiven is you get that monologue. Well, not a monologue even. It's just on the screen. The text scroll,
of text.
and it's like Will Munny took the kids and left and was said to have done well in selling dry goods, and the mother of his dead wife turned up to read a tombstone that never explained why she loved him so. And that's that. And it's like, by the way, the music is brilliant. That sad song.
Oh, it is. It's so saccharine, but really well. By the way, in some ways, an insane juxtaposition.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the soundtrack is fucking baller as fucking. That recurring theme will just break your heart every time something sad or poignant happens. It absolutely wrecks you. But anyway, so at the end of the Japanese version,
but anyway, that's the sort of film ending, Richard, where the joke you do, but it's sadly cliched, is you turn to someone in the cinema and go, "I wonder if there's a post-credit scene." You do that fucking shit joke, don't you?
So what happens in the Japanese version is Will Munny, who's called Jubei the Killer or something. Anyway, he can't face going home to his kids. So the last scene is just him walking through like the mountains of Hokkaido in the snow. It's fucking he can never return. He truly is Unforgiven, mate. So it's great.
I'll have to watch this.
Yeah, no, it's actually legit.
By the way, guys, you could tell us in the comments, but we have toyed around with doing a remakes arc, which would be an 8-film arc. Because it would be 4 remakes would be the idea, where we would do things like Seven Samurai, Magnificent Seven, Infernal Affairs, The Departed, this kind of stuff. So if you want that, let us know.
And the one last thing I wanted to say in the episode before we can wrap up, if people have enjoyed this Western, which I put it this way, I think it's a great movie irrespective of genre. I think it tells a fantastic story, augmented by fantastic performances, none greater than Gene Hackman at the peak of his powers here. But if you want to see a similar Western that has this kind of very cynical outlook on the genre itself, there is only one other movie I could even think that would surpass this in terms of its tone, and it was Sergio Leone's last spaghetti western, which was called Duck You Sucker, also known as A Fistful of Dynamite in some territories, and it is the most sad, bitter, really heartbreaking Western you will ever see, because essentially what Sergio Leone was doing at this point in his life was all the other directors that were directing spaghetti Westerns were doing all these Zapata Westerns about the Mexican Revolution because they wanted a revolution in Italy. And Leone himself, by this point, just completely jaded. He wanted to talk to all of his contemporaries by making a movie about how revolution will always fail and cost you everything in the process. And he made this movie that no one's seen, even though it's by Sergio Leone. You know, everyone knows Once Upon a Time in the West, etc. Everyone knows the good, the bad, and the ugly. No one has ever watched Duck You Sucker. And it will break your heart. It will break your fucking heart. It's got Rod Steiger in it, James Coburn. They're fucking fantastic. There's an unlikely bromance formulates in this movie. And if you really like the tone of what Unforgiven was going for, you have to watch Duck You Sucker. It will blow your socks off. No pun intended, because yes, the James Coburn's character is basically an Irish revolutionary who's not only good with bombs, he's just got dynamite strapped to him the entire time, so you can't fuck with him. It's just wonderful, a wonderful film. And like I said, it nails. It's hard to believe Unforgiven wasn't kind of like looking at that and going, oh yeah, right. I get you. I get the weary cynicism. So there you go. That Unforgiven is, for me, this is a 10 out of 10 movie. You know, 9.5 if you have to leave leeway for something to be better. It's a classic Western. It really put Clint Eastwood on the map as a director as well. Really showed what he could do. He's a very delicate touch. It's beautiful. We haven't even talked about that. The vistas in this movie are beautiful. It's just a great film. It's a great watch. I'll never not watch this. If there's an opportunity to watch it, it stays on. So.
And by the way, I also do think that is, even though I myself had that experience as a boy, if you actually really do come away with the Roger Ebert thing, like, why is the English mob part in it? I don't think you got this film, mate. Like, that's actually essential. It's like, even though, you could tell the film without it, it wouldn't be as good a film. The payoff isn't the same without that character. And I do think Richard Harris actually quietly also steals part of the film when he's in it. What a fucking great portrayal.
Just also as a reminder, because Eastwood was nominated for Best Actor, but he lost to Al Pacino.
He won Best Director.
Yeah, he won Best Director. So he was nominated for Director and Actor off this movie, and lost to Al Pacino in that fucking Scent of a Woman, the one where he's blind.
Holy fuck! Right.
That's the blind one. He's like, hoo-ah! It's mad.
It is mad how they always give the best people the Oscar, but not.
Yeah, I
for
know,
any
never
of the
their best
films.
performances.
It's so bizarre, isn't it? By the way, one person we didn't mention is, I'm trying to look up what her actual name is. Wait there a second. Right, her name is Frances Fisher, the one who plays like the madam or whatever it is.
Alice,
she actually has like an underrated performance in this film. She does a really good job. That's very believable. That could be a Deadwood character. That was very believable.
I mean, that's the legacy of this movie as well. Like,
also, by the way, since we've referenced it a million times,
just watch
if you haven't
Deadwood.
ever seen Deadwood, because sadly, even though to me it's in that pantheon with The Sopranos and The Wire and that, it's the one that no one's watched. Go watch it, because if you like this film, you're 100% going to be into it. It's right up your alley.
I mean, legendary performances, again, revisionist.
I mean, Al Swearengen's one of the greatest characters in the history of television, probably.
Yeah, but also similarly, in the same way Gene Hackman's character, I mean, you could probably make a better argument to say Al Swearengen is evil, but also he's evil. He's evil.
Similar type
he's
of guy,
evil with a purpose. He's just he's trying to keep himself situated, but he's also trying to keep Deadwood situated.
Yes.
Lots of moving parts to consider, you know. Lots of moving parts. It's hard. I've told you. You're not cut out to be a sheriff, Monty. That's what I've learned this episode.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, you're city folk. Stay in the big city, Monty, with your big bureaucrats and your feigned civility. You're not.
I'm the only one of us who's actually from the American West. Okay,
and yet we get it. We get it. Me and Duncan, we could have handled Missouri.
Monty,
we could have handled Texas.
This is an all PvP server. You need to stay in the PvE west area of the map.
No, I just need to handle justice better so that the whores don't put out $1,000 bounty that then draws assassins like moths to a flame to my town. That's it.
Also, I will just say, I won't make a big thing of it, but also I do mad fuck with this movie because I do also have the feeling. This is why I've always vibed to stuff like The Punisher and anti-heroes. It's like, I do also think in a weird way, Monty. This is why I sort of vibe with Richard's angle. Like, put it this way, I've always said this in esports. So in esports, people will tell you, Monty, that me and Richard are really bad guys who are terrible. Even though, by the way, you'll notice we're incredibly moral people, actually, who've lived by our principles. But the point is, you can't be the super nice guy and deal with the scum fox. You actually have to have someone who's willing to go in with a 6-shooter and have the shootout to the death. If you don't have that character figuratively, you won't. Like, I've seen the people, the E6 of the world, it doesn't do anything there. Like, that works again for normies. It doesn't work for the bad guys. You do actually need someone who's almost as bad as them in a fucked up way to do it, even though we're not in this analogy. But
no, let's be in this analogy. Like, you know, when evil geniuses Bob rolls into big esports, man's out.
There you go.
He's got to get got, hasn't he?
Yeah. Oh no, pretty sweet. I've realised I should have done the obvious answer because it's right there. If you're thinking of CS2, it's starring right again, or is it another fucking day ending with a Y? So you know how when I went really mean on Philip Aram, it turned out maybe a month later I sort of knew what I was talking about. Remember when I was a total inconsiderate prick to Alan Deschlon or whatever of G2? Was I completely nailing exactly who he is and reading his motherfucking soul to him directly? And then like a month or so later, inexplicably, he just came out on the most fucking off-piece podcast of all time and proved everything I said right. Oh, thank you guys. I will take the apologies in a line.
This episode should end.
That's why you need someone to be a prick.
This episode should end with a text scroll. And after this episode, Duncan went back to the farm and took his children away.
Okay.
And he wasn't seen in esports for some time.
Okay.
Nobody knew why he loved esports so.
Little Susie never understood why Monty continued to associate with Thorin. There you go. Exactly.
All right, that's it. Also, by the way, shout out to the fact that they named the town Big Whiskey, which is the world's most hilarious Western, giga Western name of all time. Not a real place, naturally.
Of course.
But,
and also, Monty, listen, this part isn't so, like, subtle, is it? The whole character's made things like, and I gave up whiskey, too. I'm going back to a town called Big Whiskey to fucking kill everyone. All right, man. Okay, whatever you say.
It is the most absurd part of this movie.
It is.
It's a banger.
Oh, and by the way, I will say as well, as someone who was British and when I was at E-League was an arsehole like this to people, if they found them annoying, I also appreciate the fact that English Bob is just completely trying to flex on the Americans 24/7. Like, I'll shoot for the Queen and you can shoot for...
$7, I believe you owe me now.
Let's shoot some pheasants. 10 shots. Like, let's say, $1 a pheasant. I'll shoot for the Queen and you for, well, whomever.
The whole thing. Listen, that part, I could just watch that and not watch the rest and pretend he was that character. I was loving that character. That character I'd watch a movie of. He mad obnoxious.
There you go. That can be the sequel.
And he did it all on it. And you find out later he did it all on
Bob
Independence Day as well. He did it all on July 4th.
You know what? We should fucking pitch that now to a studio where we do a prequel to Unforgiven where it's starring Jared Harris as the young English Bob.
There you go.
Someone would make that. Bad people would make that with no love for cinema or art, but it could get made. Conceivably so.
Also, if you want to make it actually fire and different, you make it that it's being told, though, narrated by the, like, Duchamp
in
guy,
the
and
future.
he's telling the fictionalized version.
That actor's still alive. He could be there all
version.
old by the fire going, these were the books I wrote when I was, you know, you're doing it like Titanic style. It's been however many years, she says, I can't remember. It's been 84 years since I was a total thought. Whatever. We can just kill the episode.
When are we going to do Titanic, by the way?
We can just kill the episode there.
Well, here's the sad thing. Unironically, there's a real obvious way we could do it. We could do a James Cameron arc. We could do all those brilliant films, and then we could suddenly just go, at the end, Avatar and Titanic. Give me a blindfold, a cigarette, and then just put me out of misery. I don't need to see any more. By the way, this is an example of where I have cut people off. There's people say to me, you ever seen Avatar 2? Mate, you'd have to put me in Guantanamo Bay and pin me down. Like, in no universe will I ever be watching that film. Are you out of your mind? No. The answer's no.
I have also not seen it. which Doa has been trying to change for some time, but I refuse to watch it.
Of course, Doa, the advocate for Avatar 2.
No, he thinks it's terrible. He wants me to be tortured.
See, here's what's sad. I really like Doa the person, but he is also on some Roger Ebert anti-compass shit for movies, where if he tells me, like, no, it's actually pretty good. Yeah, you're not Doa. You can keep it, mate. It's all good. It's all good. You enjoy it. It's all for you. You take my share. It's all good.
All right. That'll do it for Unforgiven, guys. We'll be back next week with the final film in our Hackman arc, which will be the episode that no one will watch, called Night Moves.
I'm ready.